Have you ever had a manager where, on paper, everything looks just fine? The feedback's positive, meetings are professional, your work is on track, but still, you walk away from your interactions with this strange sense of unease, something you just can't put your finger on. It's not aggression, it's not incompetence, it's quieter, more pervasive. It's a subtle friction that makes you second-guess yourself. Well, that feeling, that's the shadow cast by a really powerful but often invisible force in the workplace. Today, we're going to turn on the lights and get a clear look at this dynamic, the insecure manager. So let's start there, with that quiet feeling that something is off. See, this isn't about one big dramatic moment. It's about a pattern. It's that little hesitation you feel before you pitch a new idea. It's the slight tension in the room when one of your teammates gets some praise. It's that inexplicable need to kind of manage your manager's emotions. It's a subtle, constant friction that's just so hard to pinpoint and even harder to explain to anyone else. And here's the thing that's so confusing. This does not fit the stereotype of a bad boss. There's no shouting, no public meltdowns, no slamming doors. Actually, the environment is often really calm, almost meticulously professional. And that lack of obvious conflict is exactly what makes it so disorienting. You're looking for the usual signs of trouble, but when all you see is a calm surface, you start to wonder if the problem is you. In fact, they can be incredibly pleasant. They'll smile in meetings, they'll thank you for your work, they might even offer you words of support. All the external signs of a healthy, positive relationship seem to be there. And this creates this deep internal conflict, right? Your gut is screaming that something is wrong, but the evidence seems to say the exact opposite. It makes your own feelings seem irrational, like maybe you're being too sensitive or you're the one creating the issue. And yet, despite all the smiles and the thank yous, there's just this heavy blanket of caution over everything. You find yourself rehearsing simple questions in your head, censoring your own best ideas before you even say them out loud. You hesitate to take initiative, not because you can't do it, but because you can already anticipate the subtle resistance or that your idea will somehow become their idea. There's this invisible boundary, and you learn very quickly not to cross it. This is the paradox, a workplace that feels both polite and completely suffocating at the same time. So, if this doesn't fit our standard definition of bad or toxic leadership, what are we actually dealing with? Well, this is a different kind of dysfunction, something more insidious. It's not rooted in malice, it's rooted in fear. And in a lot of ways, that's more dangerous. You see, outright aggression is easy to spot. But this is a style of management that just slowly and quietly erodes potential. It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. All right, so that brings us to the diagnosis. It's time to actually put a name to this feeling and really dig into the psychology behind it. Because understanding the why behind all these confusing behaviors, well, that's the first step to being able to see them clearly and figure out how to navigate them. What we're talking about here is called insecure leadership. And the most crucial part of this definition is the distinction it makes. This is not about a lack of capability. In fact, insecure leaders are often brilliant, they're highly skilled, they have amazing track records. The issue isn't their competence, it's their internal stability. The problem is fundamentally inside. A deep, nagging lack of psychological security. Think of it like this. A secure leader is like a tree with deep roots. Their confidence, their sense of value, it comes from within. But the insecure leader, they're more like a marionette, held up by external strings. Things like praise, their title, successful projects, public approval. So even though they might look incredibly accomplished on paper, their sense of self-worth is fragile. It's dependent. And that makes them highly reactive to anything that feels like a threat to one of those strings. And this is so important to get. The insecure leader doesn't walk around consciously thinking, I'm not good enough. It's rarely that self-aware. It's more like a background process that's constantly running in their mind, just eating up mental energy. It's this subconscious hum of anxiety that shows up as this deeply ingrained defensive posture. And it influences every reaction, every interpretation, every decision they make. So how does that background anxiety actually show up in the real world? Well, that internal feeling of instability creates this overwhelming need for external stability, for predictability. And what's the quickest, easiest way to create that? Control. Control over the project details, control over who knows what, and most importantly, control over their team. It's really just a coping mechanism. When your internal world feels chaotic, the reflex is to micromanage the world outside. Okay, so we have a diagnosis, a leadership style driven by internal insecurity and this need for external control. But what does this actually look like day to day? Let's move from the theory to the practice and look at the tangible evidence, the specific, observable behaviors that are the telltale signs of an insecure leader. Now, what's really important to see here is that any one of these things, on its own, might seem like nothing. But when you see them as a consistent pattern, the underlying insecurity becomes undeniable. Take, for example, a manager who constantly interrupts you or re-explains your ideas in a meeting. That's not about clarifying, it's about putting their stamp on the idea. Or think about the manager who praises you like crazy in private, but then in a big group meeting, your contribution is suddenly downplayed or just attributed to the team. That's not an accident. It's a calculated move to manage perceptions and make sure they stay at the center of the story. Let's dig into this one for a second because it's one of the most common signs. You see a senior director who insists on proofreading every single internal memo, or a VP who needs to personally approve a minor social media post. Now, outsiders might call this being detail-oriented, but it's not. It's a retreat. While a secure leader is focused on the strategic why, the insecure leader finds safety in the tactical how, a place where they feel competent and, most importantly, completely essential. So you have to ask yourself, why does this happen? Why would a leader who is paid to think strategically spend their valuable time on work that is way below their pay grade? I mean, from a business perspective, it makes no sense at all. It's a waste of resources. But it makes perfect sense if you stop looking at it through a business lens and start looking at it through a psychological one. Because for an insecure leader, letting go of control, delegating real ownership, it doesn't feel like empowerment, it feels like erasure. If the team can succeed without their constant, detailed involvement, then what's their purpose? Their fear of becoming irrelevant is actually greater than their desire to see the team grow, so they cling to the details as proof of their own necessity. You know, this isn't just about creating a bad vibe at work. This leadership style has a real, tangible, and destructive cost to the organization. And it's a cost that just compounds silently over time, often going completely unnoticed until it's far too late. The first casualty almost every time is your top talent, your A players, your innovators, the proactive problem solvers. And why is that? It's because the very things that make them valuable, their initiative, their creativity, their desire for ownership, are seen by the insecure leader as direct threats. So after their ideas get shut down or ignored or co-opted one too many times, a little switch flips. They learn that it's just safer to do what they're told. They might not quit, not right away, but they have emotionally checked out. They stop bringing their full selves to work. This, by the way, is the true origin of quiet quitting. It's not about laziness, it's an adaptive response. And of course, that chilling effect starts to spread. The rest of the team, they're not blind. They see what happens to the high performers who stick their necks out. They learn that challenging the status quo just gets you shut down. And what evaporates is the single most important ingredient for any great team: psychological safety. Those vibrant, challenging debates that create brilliant ideas are replaced by a chorus of cautious agreement. And your meetings become performances of consensus instead of engines of progress. And this is where you get the ultimate long-term cost to the organization. Insecure leaders do not build other leaders. They cultivate dependency. They subconsciously reward loyalty over capability because loyalty feels safe and predictable. Their deep need to be needed leads them to create a team of people who are excellent at following instructions, but who are incapable of taking true independent ownership. And the result is devastating. Your leadership pipeline just dries up. No one is being developed because no one is being trusted. It really comes down to this. The entire system begins to self-select for compliance. The ambitious top performers, they eventually leave for healthier places. The people who stay are often the ones who are comfortable with the status quo. And what you're left with is a culture of mediocrity, a team that's just good enough, but will never, ever be great. But look, it doesn't have to be this way. There is a path forward, a way to shift from this fear-based control to a more mature, confident style of leadership. But it requires a very conscious decision to rewire what it actually means to be a leader. So the way forward can be broken down into this 5-step framework. And this isn't just a list of tips. It's a real progression of mindset shifts. It's about moving away from self-preservation and toward elevating your team. We'll start by redefining authority itself. Then we'll look at the internal work of separating your identity from your job. From there, we'll see how that allows a leader to see strength as an asset, not a threat, which completely changes how they delegate. And finally, it all comes together in a new way to measure a leader's true impact. Let's walk through them. Okay, step 1 is all about rethinking what authority even is. The insecure leader believes that authority means control, their ability to dictate what happens. But authority that's based on control is fragile. It only works when you're in the room. True authority is different. It's granted, not seized. It's given to you by your team, and it's built on a foundation of trust. And ironically, the more you try to control your team, the less they trust you, and the more your actual authority just withers away. Step 2, and this is a big one, is doing that internal work of unfusing your personal identity from your job title. When your entire sense of who you are is wrapped up in being the director, then any little challenge, any failure, any star performer on your team can feel like a direct threat to your very existence. Secure leaders, on the other hand, build a sense of self that is bigger than their role. They have hobbies, relationships, values that exist outside of the org chart, and this allows them to lead from a place of wholeness, not from the tiny box they occupy on a diagram.
And that leads us to the third principle, which is all about how you see talent. An insecure leader looks at a brilliant direct report and thinks, they might take my job. But a secure leader looks at that same person and thinks, they're going to make our entire team and me look incredible. They understand that talent isn't a zero-sum game. It's not a resource to be hoarded. It's a force to be unleashed. This brings us to step 4, the practical act of delegation. The insecure leader delegates tasks. They'll say, please make these 3 slides with this specific data. This approach keeps them in complete control, but it teaches the employee that their job is to follow instructions. The secure leader, however, delegates outcomes. They say, please take full ownership of this analysis. I trust you to dig in, find the insights, and figure out the best way to present them. One style creates a follower, the other creates a future leader.
And finally, the 5th and maybe the most profound principle is about redefining what success even looks like for a leader. The insecure leader measures their success by their own visibility. They need to be in every meeting, CC'd on every email, just to feel important. But a secure leader, they measure their success by a completely different metric, their own obsolescence. Their ultimate goal is to build a team and a system so effective and so autonomous that it thrives even when they're not there. That is the true legacy of a great leader. So really, let's just end on this one thought. The entire struggle of the insecure leader is this desperate attempt to stay relevant. But they've got it completely backward. True leadership, the kind that creates lasting value, isn't about protecting your own importance. It's about systematically giving it away, empowering others until they are more capable than you ever were. That is the final, most secure act of a true leader.